Hello and welcome to Steve's Vintage Model Builds. I'm Steve. How are you? Welcome to everyone, to my new subscribers and returning subscribers, returning viewers. Today we're going to do some cooking. I had mentioned in a previous video that I had picked up a whole brisket. There we go. Whole beef brisket. And here it is. This one is from Spring Creek Farms, and which is they're ranchers in Alberta, right next door to us. Well, I say right next door, but they're over the Rocky Mountains, about 800 kilometers away. Excuse me. Yeah, still in Canada. So yeah, Spring Creek Farms. Fourth generation family owned outfit, and all they do is premium beef. So what we've got here is we've got a 7.665 kilo brisket, which is about, I don't know, 16, 18 pounds, 16, 17 pounds, something like that. Anyways, this cost $92.75 Canadian. But as you can see, it's a honking big piece of meat, and we'll get plenty of meals out of it. I figured it out, and it comes out to about $6 a pound. And so today we're gonna do some corned beef. So the corned beef video is going to be in 3 parts. I did the zucchini bread video, and then when I tried to stitch it together in VLC Media Player, it was a disaster, and both were corrupted, and all I got out of it was 2 beautiful loaves of zucchini bread. Anyways, lots of zucchini coming in the garden, so I'll be able to do that again. So this, as I said, is going to be in 3 parts. Part 1 is going to be breaking down the brisket. Most people aren't in a position or situation or even would want to cook a whole brisket. And it's not advisable to do it without breaking it down. Yeah, $6 a pound. I mean, you're not going to get that anyway. So, again, with a little time, a little effort, actually a lot of time, mostly sitting in the fridge, but with some time and a little effort, you can have, you pick up one of these, you can have, corned beef for an awful long time. Also, you don't have to corn the brisket. You can, just cook it like you would a regular roast, and I'll go into that as well. The first thing is that I'm going to do American style corned beef. That's not U.S. style, that's North America style, or yeah, America style, which is actually brined. It's basically it's a salt brine, which is salt, water, and some other ingredients, which we'll go into. Corning itself, corn was an ancient, I think it was an Old English word that really meant any kind of heavy grain, like we get with kosher salt, or like we get with corn, although back then they didn't have corn, because corn is a New World thing. The British and Irish are most familiar with this as what would be called salt beef, or sometimes it's called bully beef. Basically it was, the beef was packed in salt, which was very expensive. And also in the cities and so forth, in the U.S., particularly New York, salt in large quantities was difficult to come by. So we'll get into a little bit more of that. I'm going to start with, this is a vacuum packed, And I'm going to start by talking about grades of beef. In Canada, the highest grade of beef is prime. That has the most marbling and the best color, along with all the other things that they look at. Then it goes to AAA, AA, and A. All of those have no, they're usually from cows that are 2.5, 3 years old, or actually steers, but I suppose you could get it from cows. Anyways, it's usually steers. Cows in the beef industry are mostly used for making little cows, and I think they only go to the butcher when they've kind of outlived their lives. So that's way down in the B, C, D range. But we're going to talk about A. This is AA. The difference between prime, AAA, and AA isn't much. Prime has the most marbling. AAA has a little bit less, and AA has a little bit less than that. As we know, fat is flavor. It also provides moisture during slow cooking. But you won't find much prime, either in Canada or the United States. Most of the prime beef prime grade beef goes to restaurants. In the United States, though, you can find them at different post exchanges for the military. And they deserve the best, and they should get it. So they do. In the US, it's prime, choice, selected, standard. And in the UK, it's A, A.1, and A.2. It goes all the way down. So a little bit of beef terminology. There's basically three. There's heifers, which are female cows, which haven't had a baby cow yet, or are having their first baby cow. Once they have their baby cow, then they become cows. Well, their calf, yeah. And then there's a steer. Steers are usually for beef, and they are castrated at a very young age. Oh no, poor steers. And this makes them a little more docile to handle, and so on and so forth. As we've seen in the last 20 years or so, when you emasculate men, they are much easier to deal with. I'm not saying this is a good thing. And then, of course, there's the bull. And the bull has not been castrated. The bull has one purpose, and that is to serve the cows, to make little cows, or steers, or whatever it happens to be. So, there we go. All right. So, today, what we're going to need is we're going to need a good knife. We've seen this knife before. You can use a butcher's boning knife. You could use a very high quality fish knife, or you could use a butcher's blade, which is kind of like a curved scimitar. It's about that big. Some are even bigger. But that's for butchers who are going to break down the whole animal. We don't need that here. We're just going to separate the point from the flat, and I'll go into that in a minute. And before we do anything, first of all, here's what we're going to need. We need a quart of water. That's 4 cups, or 1 liter. 12 ounces of kosher salt. If you're using regular salt, use kosher salt. You can use pickling salt, but you know, table salt has a different consistency and has different weight and volume. This recipe comes from Alton Brown, one of my food cooking gurus. Brilliant man, excellent chef, and he's a lot of fun to watch. For years he had a show on called Good Eats, and one of the things that attracted me to his show is he's very much into the food science, and you know, so it's not just like you know, you do this, you do this, you do that, and then you get this. He goes into, you know, everything from, that's where I learned the Maillard effect. He goes into all those things, and talks about food chemistry, and so if you're a foodie, it's very interesting. So yeah, that's on Food Network, if you're in North America. The previous recipes I did, you know, they weren't kosher. And the reason we hear a lot about corned beef and brisket in Jewish delis and so on and so forth is that this comes from the front of the animal, and kosher actually comes from well, it's an adaptation of the Hebrew word for kosher, but kashrut is the actual rules of what's kosher and what's not kosher, what's allowed, what's not allowed. And nobody's really sure when these were actually put down and codified, although pretty much 3,000 years ago, writings have been found where you know, pork was prohibited along with some other animals. Excuse me. Mostly because of the diseases that they carry. Which are very difficult, require a lot of cooking, which is hard in the desert if you're wandering for 40 years or whatever. So everything from the belly button forward is kosher, with the exception of things that are directly attached to the spine, and that's because of mad cow disease. And so you know, all of those dietary rules, they have very you know, they're based in science and based in what's safe to eat. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over and I'm going to get it out of the package, which is a messy business. And I'm just going to pause the camera while I do that. Okay, so now that that's done, I'll set this aside. And we're going to need, as I said, a quart of water, 12 ounces kosher salt, half a cup brown sugar. Light is best. I wouldn't use regular white sugar. That would be too sweet. I've got the sugar here is a little darker. It's not that important, although darker sugar usually is not as sweet because it's less refined. So, excuse me. So if you do have like really dark brown sugar, then you can add a little bit of extra. We've got 4 teaspoons of pink salt, otherwise known as Prague powder. This is not Himalayan pink salt. Himalayan pink salt is pink salt. It's salt that's pink. You do not want to use that. It will not, well, I mean, yeah, don't use that. Okay? It's called pink salt for a reason. You can use it for corning beef. You can use it for curing bacon. Every once in a while, when I see some nice pork belly on sale, I'll pick it up and lay down some homemade bacon. Which, if you've ever made your own bacon, you would find it hard to go back to other bacon. Basically, it's got salt, it's got nitrates, and it's got nitrites. And so, oh no! 4 teaspoons. It's not that much. You know, unless you're going to be eating 10 pounds of corned beef every day, you don't need to worry about it. It's not an issue, okay? Hope the food police don't come after me. But it's not a food safety issue at all. If for some reason you can't get Prague powder, you can use saltpeter. And usually you can find saltpeter in any good store, usually a gourmet store with pickling supplies. Again, if you're in the military, you can just use the coffee. That's a joke. I don't think they do that anymore. Besides, there's Tim Hortons and Starbucks on all the military bases now anyway. So yeah, but if you can't find it, often the drugstore will have it. So you can go and ask the pharmacist if they've got some saltpeter, and they'll sell it to you. So we have 2 teaspoons of peppercorns, 2 bay leaves, which we will crush, 8 whole cloves, 8 whole allspice berries. That's these. That's this. We're going to get our Rasta on today. See, we got the Jamaica, and this is Cool Runnings, Cool Runnings is the brand. Excuse me. Cool Runnings was also a movie. It was a movie about the Jamaican bobsled team, which competed at the 1988 Calgary, Canada Olympics. And I think they crashed. But anyways, it's a fun movie if you ever have a chance to look at it. What happened was there was a sprinter, a Jamaican sprinter. I think he was a 100-meter dash guy. And in the qualifier, somebody crashed into somebody else who crashed into him. And he got knocked out of the race. And there were no other opportunities for Olympic team. But then he came across who at that time was a disgraced bobsled manager, who in the movie was played by John Candy, very funny man, good actor. He's gone now, too young. But anyways, so it's quite a story. And of course, this is also called pimento in Jamaica. And allspice comes from a relative of the myrtle family. It's in the myrtle tree family. And so it's very popular, not just in Caribbean cuisine, but in all sorts of different cuisines. It's a lot like nutmeg, but okay, don't get upset. So if you don't have allspice, especially if it's ground, you can substitute nutmeg. And I'll often kind of go half and half, or if it's allspice, then I'll pop in a bit of nutmeg in there. The two complement each other very nicely. So you can use it for all sorts of things. The other thing is we've got 12 whole juniper berries, and our British friends will know that juniper is what gin is made from. So it has that earthy green kind of flavor. And juniper berries are not easy to find, and they are expensive. I got these off of Amazon, and they were a pretty good price. You don't use them very often, so they can go in the freezer when they're done. We're also going to need half a teaspoon of ground ginger. And this recipe also calls for a teaspoon of mustard seed, which I went to the pantry today and I was disappointed to find I don't have any. So again, I substitute a little bit of ground. I don't know if you can see it. It's just a pinch. Just a pinch. And if there's dash, pinch, and smidgen. Smidgen is about 1/16 of a teaspoon. No, 1/32 of a teaspoon. And a pinch, a dash is 1/16. No, 1/32, 1/16. Yeah, and a dash is 1/8 of a teaspoon. So And I also have a little piece of cinnamon stick. Goes very well with allspice. You can use a whole cinnamon stick if you like, but that's enough because cinnamon obviously is very strong. Okay, so that goes set aside. Got our water. So I mentioned it's gonna be 3 parts. First part is going to be breaking down the brisket. The second part is going to be preparing the brine, and then it'll go into the fridge for anywhere from 5 to 10 days. About 7 days is usually best, depending on the size you're brining. But yeah, so. Oh, and back to my Irish friends as well. Seamus, I love you. The Irish in Ireland, well, here's the thing. A little bit of history, all right? The British came and took all the beef. So the regular Irish people didn't really see much corned beef, except when it came back in the can. And what they do is they do corned beef and cabbage, or they do bacon and cabbage, So, and I've been told by my Irish friends that no respectable Irishman would eat corned beef and cabbage. However, the way it all got started was Jewish people who had emigrated to New York, and around in the mid 19th century, there were about 80,000 Jewish people in New York, and at that point in time, beef brisket was cheap, and so it was an easy way to feed a lot of people. And of course, when the Irish came over, they were immigrants too. They were poor, and yeah, so that's where it came from. So it's American Irish who love the corned beef and cabbage, and so that's that. Now, gonna gear up because we're gonna do some butchering. So I must don my armor. This is a chainmail glove used by butchers. It's washable. There. Of course, as soon as I go off camera, it goes right in. Okay. So, here's my chef's knife. I wouldn't recommend using this, although you could. No cut, no fuss, no muss. This, along with my hands, was also washed in warm soapy water. Oh, and before I move the brisket on there, do you like our Brazilian cherry wood? It's lovely wood, and I keep it in shape with linseed oil. And linseed oil comes from the flax plant. It's non-toxic, and it also has antibacterial qualities. Excuse me. And also, in classical painting, guys like Rembrandt and that, they used linseed oil-based paints. Okay, so we've got all sorts of stuff going on here. Now you'll see there's these little darker brown spots. Can you see that? This thing's heavy, so I'm not picking it up a lot. But can you see that? See how it's a little brown compared to the other parts? There's nothing wrong with that. When these are put into their vac packs, they're then immersed in water, hot water, for a period of time, and that helps to get rid of any bacteria. Professional chefs and barbecuers would often trim this off. Me, I'm corning it, so or I'm brining it, So the color's not going to matter. Oh, and speaking of which, if you use saltpeter, you're not going to get that beautiful red color, but you'll still get the flavor. So there you go. Okay, so now what we're doing. Beverage of choice today is tea. I also have some ginger infusion. It's great for throat health. Okay, so there's two parts to the brisket, and the brisket is the front of the cow. I'm going to call it a cow. Is the front of the cow that runs down this way, and then the legs go down to the bottom. So this part at the top, it's actually two different kinds of muscles, and this part of the grain goes one way, and this part of the grain goes another way. So what we're going to do, we're going to do like this. You don't want to saw, okay? That's why it's not recommended to use a serrated knife, because you don't want to saw. What you want to do is you want to pull it back like this. Can you see that? Can you see what I'm doing there? There. This does not go in the garbage. That goes in the trimmings bowl and can be used for soups, stews, or whatever. Okay, and this is called the deckle, D-E-C-K-L-E, not decal, deckle. And you wanna remove this. I'm gonna turn this way. This is a big honking piece of fat, and no matter what you do with it, it's not going to render down. So you want to get rid of as much of this as possible. And there's lots of ways to do this, so like with everything else, this is not the be-all and the end-all, as my mom used to say. Excuse me, it's how I do it. And you trim it differently if it's for barbecue. But since we're just going to be corning it, or brining it, we don't need to worry about that too much, because we're not going to worry about presentation or anything like that. Okay. Because, you know, once, you know, we don't have to worry about a smoke ring, we don't have to blah, 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 blah. So, okay, so, we've got this. There, now, this is the fatty, obviously the fatty part of the meat. And I don't know if you can you see all the striations there running through that piece. This has fat too, but yeah, so okay, so now we go over to the fat side, and this is where the fun begins. And you see why they call this the fat side. So anyways, so this is the flat and this is the point. Alright, and you want to separate the two. And the way to do that you'll be able to see here where the grain of the beef meat changes, and this is where you're going to start. Okay, so we're going to go down like this. I'm going to do it this way so you can see better. Pull it back. Oops, did a boo-boo there. Okay. And basically you just want to peel it back until you get right down to near the end here. Okay, here's your point, here's your point, and here's your flat. Okay, now professionals will just tidy that up a little bit. This is not even. And so what a lot of professionals will do is they will cut it, they'll butterfly it this way and turn it out so that it gets to be even. Excuse me. That's not an issue for us here really, because what we're going to do is we are going to cut this into pieces, and so they'll be relatively even. Okay, so this is going to go turn this over, and you'll see here a lot of this is fat. So what you want to do is you want to run your knife under here. You don't want to cut all the way through. And again, you're just kind of scraping it. And you don't want to get all the fat. But you do want to take it down a little bit. For this, I'm going to get the big dog out. This is a serrated knife. As I said, if you're doing this for competition, you don't want to use this. But since we're just trimming fat, oh, and this stuff. If you render this stuff down, what you get is tallow. And it's the best stuff to cook French fries with. Everybody always used to talk about McDonald's French fries. That was one reason why they were so good. They use vegetable shortening now, but for years they used beef tallow. Okay. Ooh, we're going to have to get you to the sharpener. So you just want to have about maybe a 1/4 inch left here. Okay, so take this. This is about the only time. Yeah, so we're going to cut across the grain here, and there's one. across the grain here, it's 2. So you see there's a different thickness here. What you can do is you can butterfly this out and turn that out so that it's the same. Or the other thing you can do, depending on your cut, you can fold this over. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3 here, and I don't know, these are a couple pounds each. Isn't that nice? Look at that. Look at that. That grain. Yeah, very nice. Okay, so that goes there. And this is what we're going to corn today. Now we come back and we're going to clean this up. And this is the part, the point is the part that's going to be best for this is the part that's going to be best for like roasting, or you know, if you're going to, you do it like a roast, like you would braise a roast. Okay. And again, we've got different pieces. So that's what you want to do. You want to do that like this, and then just pull it back and it'll come off. That's all I'm going to do with that, because this isn't there we go. Okay, so this will go into a pot, and we'll render that down. So you see we've got an awful lot of fat here. There. Okay. And there's your nice point. And you could cut this in 2 as well. I think I will. Okay, so that part is done, and hope you found it interesting and useful. And I'll be back shortly to prepare the brine. Okay, so here we go. We're going to put a big pot on, and we're going to add our quart of water. And all of this, all of these guys. And the salt. If you already have crushed bay leaves, you can use those. I just smush them up like this. Okay. Give it a stir. Excuse me. Okay, so you want this over high heat until everything's dissolved. Okay, and so in addition to the other things, we need a vessel like this. And 2 large or extra large resealable bags. If you have a fridge that's big enough, you can put it in a bucket like this. Or in, you know, the big buckets you can get at Home Depot or wherever. Excuse me. You just want to make sure that it's food grade. Okay, so we got, oh, I wish you could smell that. Oh, it's like walking through a pine forest right after a rain. Oh my goodness, it's so beautiful. Okay, off. It's boiling heavily. You can give it a stir. You'll be able to tell if everything's dissolved. Swish everything around. Okay, now this recipe calls for 3 pounds of ice. And you want to be careful adding it. You don't want to just pour it in all at once. You want to get a little bit in there to start with, so it has something to hit besides the liquid. So this is a 5-pound bag, so we're going to use about 3/5. Take this right off the heat. And we're going to want a nice big ladle. My little If you don't have one of these, I suggest you get one, especially if you cook roasts and things like that. There's ways to tell if stuff is done. But I'm not going to go into that because, again, I don't want to get into trouble with the food police. Okay, so yeah, this is just a standard probe thermometer. I think it cost me $12 or something. I've set it for Fahrenheit, and you want this to be 45 degrees Fahrenheit before you add it to the meat. So again, we'll take a pause, and I'll be back. Okay, so that's down to the temperature we want it at. And so one goes in. And the other goes in. Okay, so after the cleanup in aisle 1, this is where we're at. This is what I should have done in the first place, is put it in a bowl. And you want to seal up the bag. There. And you want to get all the air out as much as possible. Okay. Okay, now here we go into the fridge. Try and tilt them a bit. And off we go to the fridge. Okay, so that's it. We're ready to go. That goes in the fridge for 5 to 7 days. I usually turn it over every day, just to make sure everything's getting it on together. And that's all there is to it. After about 5 days, you can probably do it. 7 days is probably best, unless it's a smaller cut. But there you go. So, part 2 of the video, we'll be back. Excuse me. We'll be back to actually, you know, steam it and prepare it and have corned beef. Yeah. All right. So, thanks for joining me. Thanks for everybody's support. I really appreciate it. I'm pretty new at this and not very good at it, but I hope you enjoy some of the information I put forward and spending a little bit of time with me. So, got lots of cleaning up to do. But that's it for today. So thanks again. Really appreciate everybody's time. And we will see you next time. Bye now.